Then move on to the question around the political appetite for renewables. I believe that there is significant appetite for renewables, and that is evidenced in government policy as expressed in the 2019 iteration of the Integrated Resource Plan, which makes it quite clear that of the 11.8 gigawatts that are currently out for inquiry following the ministerial determination in terms of Section 34, that some 6,800 megawatts of that will be allocated for renewable energy. So I think that is probably the clearest indication that as far as government policy is concerned, there is broad alignment that renewable energy is going to comprise a significant part of future generation capacity investments in South Africa. Sekunati, just remind me of Hillary's final question, please, if you've got it.
Hillary said, what is the total cost of the 6 new steam generators?
Yeah, right.
Thank you. I can comment on that. It's amazing technology today. The Chinese company is Senpec, that manufactured the 6 steam generators, Shanghai Electrical Nuclear, and then the cost per SG is around about 700 million rand, so 7 times 6, about 4.2, 4.3 billion. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. On the 30th of September, just to add to that last question about the SGR costs, we sent a statement that said the whole project to extend the life of the nuclear power station by 20 years would cost an estimated 20 billion rand, and we are still within budget. Can we have the next batch of questions, please?
Yes, and the next question is also another question from Antoinette. Mr. Kasim, what is your sales projection for financial year 21, taking into account the impact of COVID? The next one is, what is your projected OCGT load factor for the full financial year? And the next question is from Hillary. She's asking, can you give us your projected monthly EAF over the next 2 years, assuming your maintenance goes as planned? And the next question comes from Angelo from CGTN. Is Eskom right-sizing the organization? And if so, please provide the details.
Thank you. Let's take one more.
Okay, we've got another one from Hillary. She's asking, are there any plans to bring outside investors into the transmission company once it is established as a legally separate subsidiary?
Thank you. André, are you going to take the question on financials, or shall we leave that for next Friday?
No, I can give some information on that. Since the start of the pandemic up to today, the estimated total impact on our revenue line in terms of lost sales is some 9 billion. For the current financial year to date, as we sit here, the number is about 4 billion. So for the 2020 financial year, the impact is therefore approximately 5 billion in terms of lost revenue due to the pandemic. It bears emphasizing that there were some associated savings, obviously, because we did not have to produce the electricity, so there were some savings on coal, diesel and so forth, but not enough to offset this particular loss. As far as the OCGT load factor is concerned, if I can ask Jan to comment on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, André. As I said during the presentation, the month of July, August, September, it was extremely high. It was 10%. We have provided, that's the right word, we have provided for an amount of nearly 3 billion rand for OCGT, which equates to about 4% load factor. However, what we have given you today and the outlook, given the fact that we embark aggressively on the reliability maintenance as well as midlife refurbishment, we believe we may end up where we have been in July, August, September, up to about 10%. So we haven't finalized it, the forecast, the outlook at this point in time, but I would guess at this point in time between 8 and 10% load factor. Then the question on the EAF next year per month. I don't have the detail with me. I've checked with Rulani next to me. We only have, per power station, for coal as well as in for total for the year, which for coal, as I said, 67% and then 70% as a whole for the whole fleet. But we will make that available, the forecast per month per power station. We will let Sikunati have that. Thanks.
Have we dealt with all of this batch?
No. Angelo,
Thank
there's
you.
a question, and then Hillary also had another question. So Angelo's question about right-sizing the organization. Yes, we have made progress in right-sizing the organization. We have ended the 2019 financial year with a staff complement of some 46,000 employees. At the end of the past financial year, the headcount came in at about 44,000 employees. This was achieved through a recruitment freeze. As you've seen, we've been very deliberate in not losing key and critical skills as a result of the recruitment freeze. So it has been a focused but also very deliberate effort to reduce headcount without impacting operations. We have implemented a voluntary severance package for senior managers, and of course on a cost-to-company basis, those managers are much more expensive per individual than lower-level workers in the organization. So the relative benefit to the organization in terms of labor cost savings is disproportionately higher. And we have been able to reduce our senior level management complement by some 182 senior managers who have left the organization. We're also managing through natural attrition to keep a cap on further staff growth, and I think all in all we are on track to reach a targeted level of headcount of 38,000 employees by the end of FY23, based on our current projections of how the organization is going to change in size and shape going forward. If I can then move to Hillary's question regarding outside investors in transmission. At this stage, the intended end state for the transmission business is as a wholly owned, legally separate entity under Eskom Holdings SOC. And as you can hear from the phrase wholly owned, we mean by that at this stage, in terms of the Department of Public Enterprises roadmap, outside shareholders in transmission are not contemplated for us to introduce into transmission. Thank you.
Thank you, André. Let's just repeat this one more time. The colleagues phoning me, please send your email to mediadesk@eskom.co.za. All the information is there for you. Please give us the next batch.
Okay, we have one from Alexandra Winning at Reuters. He wants to know, when can we expect the EAF to be consistently above 70%? How long-lasting do you expect the impact of your maintenance program to be? Is there a risk that it only results in a short-lived improvement in the EAF before plant performance deteriorates again? Then we've got one from Mariam Issa again. She wants to know, the CSIR predicted in a report published in August that load shedding would worsen over the next few years, reaching 4,500 gigawatt hours in 2022. Without significant decisions and action, Are you confident that given the steps taken since then, this outlook will not materialize?
Thank you, Suzy. Yes, Tandu.
Yeah, just the last one to make your questions 5. This one is from Lamiz. Last year there was a discussion of a climate-linked finance facility. Is Eskom considering this, and is it part of the new drive for renewables? Also, may we please get an update on the work of the Just Energy Transition Office? Has it met with key stakeholders, and what are some of the considerations being discussed? Are there any concrete plans in place yet?
Thank you. Load shedding. Will it worsen? Jan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sigunati. I would just like Marian to phrase a question again. I didn't hear that, please. But let me answer the first one for the time, Alexander. The EAF going forward. I believe the last slide in my first presentation spells it out. If you don't make time for maintenance, your equipment will make it for you. So I believe it would be extremely irresponsible of the leadership of Eskom to now maintain and then to stop when the EAF recover again. Maintenance is an ongoing process, and that is the intention going forward, that we will continue to do maintenance. So we would like to be 70% next year, and then to take it to the 72%, which we believe is realistic. And that 72 take into consideration, and the reason why it's not going to 75, over and above the fact that we have an old system, is the fact that we will continue to do maintenance. So that is absolutely the intention, is to continue with maintenance. Because if you don't do it, you find yourself where we are at this point in time. So we don't see this as short-lived. You know, if we haven't learned now of the case studies that I've demonstrated to you and that we know so well, I believe it would be extremely irresponsible. If we can just get that question.
CSIR study and world
Marian, I cannot comment on that. What I, however, can comment is what we have been talking and what the Chief has been talking. Eskom, for the country to grow the economy, to just rely on Eskom is not possible. So if your question and the CSIR study, and I'm not fully familiar with that, if it relies only on Eskom, I believe that we may be heading for difficulties. This is why we as Eskom believe very strongly that over and above Eskom there needs to be other players that is providing capacity for the country. So I don't know, André, if you perhaps can comment anything else on the 4,500. I cannot, sorry.
Yeah, Jan, I think if you do a high-level analysis of where we are with the state of our generation system, and you accept what we said earlier on about the generation units being old, 39 years of age, and as Jan said, they have had a hard life. We have run them very hard, and we've not maintained them as well as we should have. To expect that we can fix them to the state in which they were originally delivered is, I think, not realistic. And therefore our plea has been consistently that in addition to the reliability maintenance program that we are carrying out today, we need additional generation capacity to be added to the grid, and hence the fact that we welcome the 11.8 gigawatts announced by DMRE. We really think that this is the right step taken by Minister Montash. However, if I may ask the Minister, we need more. And because of the time lapse between decision making followed by the commercial process, construction being implemented, until the power gets onto the grid, we really need to accelerate these processes and ensure that the commercial process is as successful as possible. And our view is that early involvement of Eskom in these commercial processes will enhance the likely positive outcome of this procurement program. But we shouldn't stop at the 11.8 gigawatt. We believe that there's more that is required. because the economy, hopefully, will grow. And as the economy grows and demand increases, we will need to position ourselves to keep on supplying electricity to South Africa. So we think this is a very positive step, but it should only be a first step to be followed by subsequent procurement programs. The question on climate change and climate financing, again, it's a really fascinating energy revolution that we are living in at this point in time. The decrease in the cost of renewable energy has been very remarkable. From the initiation of photovoltaic technology, which was so expensive that it was only really available for use on spacecraft, to where we are today, where it's readily accessible to all and sundry, has been a remarkable improvement in the unit cost of photovoltaics, and wind generation is not far behind. So there is a really significant business case, even if you ignore any environmental considerations. From a business case perspective, renewables are becoming very compelling from a cost perspective. One has to add, however, that, and this is stating the very, very obvious, so forgive me, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So we need to enable Eskom, the grid operator, to invest also in storage capability so that we can harness renewable resources when they are available and then feed that power back into the grid, whether it's through pump storage or battery technology. We have recently issued phase 1 of a very substantial battery storage inquiry to the market with the assistance of the World Bank. So we are already planning ahead for that eventuality. The availability of financing linked to that, of course, is very clear, and we have received commitments and expressions of interest in writing from some of our existing funders who clearly have skin in the game as far as Eskom is concerned. They have a vested interest in ensuring that Eskom succeeds going forward, so they are prepared to offer us concessional funding based on the accelerated introduction of renewable energy, low carbon, no carbon electricity into the grid. And we certainly view that as a very interesting and opportune confluence of circumstances that lead us to retire old, non-reliable, unreliable plant, coal-fired, and replace it with cleaner, greener technologies based on concessional financing. So a very interesting opportunity for us to also improve air quality, reliability and availability, and also cost of electricity going forward. As far as the Just Energy Transition Office is concerned, you may know that we are the first business in South Africa to establish a dedicated Just Energy Transition team. That team commenced work earlier in the year, and they have made remarkable progress already. We've done extensive system modeling to understand what the requirements of the system are going to be going forward. We are now in the process of developing financial and business plans to underpin the required investments. We are continuously engaging with DFIs, developmental financing institutions, who are, as I said, keen to assist us in this regard, and we are forging ahead. And again, just to emphasize, we are really committed to not leaving those communities that have invested generations in coal, whether it be in mining or in coal-fired generation, behind in this transition process, in order to ensure that it is a just transition. That is really going to be a very important element in how we tackle and enable this energy revolution that we are living through. Thanks, Ikonati.
Thank you, colleagues. I can assure you all of you colleagues that we acknowledge and we are reading all the questions we are receiving. We are not choosing only Antoinettes and Chris's. So keep sending them, please. Tandiwe?
Okay, the next question is from Mariam Isa for Mr. Oberholzer. If I understood you correctly, the report shows that 1.37 billion was spent on diesel required by OCGTs in this financial year, compared with a budget of 561.1 million. Given further significant use of OCGTs predicted in months ahead, what do you now expect the final expenditure on diesel for financial year 2021 to be? And the next question is from Bianca, and she's asking how many coal stations will be shut and when, and how will the fall in capacity be compensated? For the separation of the transmission business, how much of Eskom's debt will be passed down into the company? And the last question from Bianca is, will there be a more regular load shedding schedule published? How many megawatts of electricity will be load shedded until the end of maintenance in 2021?
We've also got one from Lisa Stain. She wants to know, how has Eskom fared in getting its coal bill down?
Please repeat the question.
How has Eskom fared in getting its coal bill down?
Coal bill, thank you. André?
Right, I'm going to ask Jan to answer the OCGT question first. Thank you.
Marion, yes, you're correct. Year to date, end of September, we had a budget of a provision, not a budget. We had a provision of 560 million for utilization of diesel to supplement capacity. And yes, we have used 1.3 billion as of the end of September. We had a provision for year end of 2.9 billion, and at this point in time, not finalized yet, 4.2 billion. But I must emphasize that is just looking into the future. That's what we see at this point in time. So we had provided 2.9, but it looks at this point in time that it may be just over 4 billion. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Jan. In response to Bianca's question, how many coal stations will be shut down and when? So again, just to give background there, the typical life of plant is about 50 years. There are some of our stations that were placed in preservation mode, and these actions taken at a time when we had surplus capacity added about 15 years to the life of these stations. We have approached the board for a shutdown of units at 3 power stations, Komati, André, and Grootvlei, around FY23. However, this is contingent on the conclusion of a socio-economic engagement plan, which is part of the just energy transition, to ensure that we are able to meet the requirements of those communities and that we don't just literally and figuratively pull the plug on them. So that process is on the go. However, this is quite a delicate dance that we have to do because it depends on the timing of additional generation capacity coming onto the grid. So it may be that we have to extend the life of some of these old plants beyond what would be ideal in terms of the design life in order to keep sufficient energy on the grid and to keep on generating electricity. So at this point in time, we have already placed some 14 units, relatively small units, but nonetheless 14 units from Indrina, Grootvlei and Komati. We've shut them down and we've placed them in reserve storage, and it's very unlikely that they will be recommissioned and operate again. Generally speaking, we are following the prescripts of the IRP 19 with a view to retire our plants in accordance with that plan. If you go and take a look at the plan, you will see a very clear table on the anticipated retirement of coal-fired generation and when other forms of generation are intended to come onto the grid. So that is available as part of the IRP. When we look at the allocation of debt into transmission, this is one of the key separation issues that we are having to deal with. It is clear that the bulk of the Eskom debt is going to sit with generation, certainly more than 50% at this point in time. We think that about a quarter each of the debt is going to be in transmission and distribution. So that gives you a rough idea of where the numbers are likely to pan out, but it is still subject to further work. What is very important to emphasize here as well is that we have to be extremely careful not to precipitate an event of default under our loan agreements as we restructure Eskom. And we therefore have to bear in mind what our covenants are in terms of our loan agreements to ensure that the concerns of our lenders are appropriately addressed. Jan, can I ask you how many megawatts of load shedding we are going to have?
André, my crystal ball just broke. I don't know, that for me is a difficult one, really difficult. However, if we look at what Sekgomotso has presented in terms of the outlook, the risk for load shedding will be stage 1, and we do foresee the possibility of stage 2 as well at this point in time. Sekgomotso, I don't know if you have anything to add, but this is what the outlook is at this point in time. Stage 1, if and when we have load shedding, when that risk materializes, definitely stage 1, and the possibility of stage 2 as well. So that is 1,000 megawatts, and then 2,000 megawatts at level 2.
Thank you, Jan. I think if we just reflect on what we shared regarding the outlook, and we gave a histogram that indicates the quantum of unplanned outages, I think it's important that we appreciate that we've talked about the unpredictability of the plant performance. So if you are to give a number, it has to be qualified by so many parameters. I think it is really difficult because you have to say, if we are doing so much planned maintenance, we have so much unplanned, we have demand at this level, and we have so much diesel, then this is what we can expect. I think it is best to accept that the level of load shedding is unknown, but we are clearly doing everything to make sure we minimize that risk and that impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Sekgomotso. If I can now turn to the question on the reduction in our cost of coal. You may recall that at the end of 2018, Eskom had a severe shortage of coal, and short-term contracts were concluded in order to address that shortfall. The prices paid for coal at that time were higher than the average, but those contracts are now by and large running out, and we are therefore seeing a reduction in our overall coal bill. If I can give you some more granular numbers, we are about for FY.
Right, a briefing by Eskom there on your shot, André, Ruyter. We're keeping an eye on a number